What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the GASOCAST. Officially a new season. So we're on to season 5, episode 1. And the reason it's a new season is because we have finally finished, means we're on to GASO season. You got the C crew today. Me, Michael Timmons, IFM Hoopers, and Gaso Linden. So bear with us. We're going to talk all state. We were at state together watching all the games. And we're going to kind of preview the GASO season. But before we start, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Clutch Shots, Shots AI, the first ever smart highlight creator. Whether you're an athlete, proud parent, coach, or organization, Clutch Shots AI makes creating pro quality sports highlights fast, easy, and unforgettable. Capture, reframe, and share your best moments in seconds. All optimized for social media. Say goodbye to hours of editing and hello to instant eye-catching highlights. Ready to elevate your game? Download the Clutch Shots AI app today and revolutionize your highlights with a 2-week free trial. That's the first time I've stuttered on one of the ad reads. Excited about Clutch Shots. Actually, this weekend they have some fun stuff in the works for our King of the Court. So I'm excited for that. Some housekeeping. The Gasso Fast Break. Lyndon, will you be wrapping a bow on all the state coverage there? I guess we.
Yeah, no doubt. We got a lot of stuff coming, some more in-depth stuff on some of the MVPs, some game tidbits and notes, and some of the guys, some of the unsung heroes who elevated their stock, even if they didn't make an all-tournament team or get an MVP or even win the state title. But there was a lot of good basketball players that we saw, so we'll have a lot of coverage from that in this week's Fast Break.
Yeah, and we'll get into this more, but the Gasso schedule has been out. Follow our socials. It's pinned on X and it's pinned on Instagram. But just make sure you're asking, like, as your teams are forming, make sure you're asking your coaches, hey, are we playing in Gasso? We've covered Gasso. We've covered high school all year long. That means we've covered you, and we're ready to continue to do it on the grassroots side of things. And as always, follow us on X and Instagram. I'm IFM Hoopers everywhere, Gasso Linden as well. So, let's get into it. We just talked. So really quickly before we talk about the state tournament, Lyndon, give the viewers a pitch for why they should play in Gasso.
Yeah, I mean, we're the most familiar with your game. We know you. Like we said, my personal number for teams I watched in the high school season is somewhere around 250. Michael. So, we know the teams, we know the names. We're familiar with your game, and we advocate for you for every level, whether you're a high major who's going to get the blue blood sniffing around, or if you're somebody who wants to go play D3 and just get your school taken care of. We're going to advocate for your game, because if you play at a Gasso, we're going to be there. We're going to watch your games. We're going to know the context. We're going to know, the level of ball that we think you can go play, and we're going to advocate for you to those coaches.
Yeah, to follow up on that, it's pretty simple. Your name just means more at Gasso. We talk about that we've covered you in the high school season. And a lot of times what ends up happening is you may be the guy on your high school team. But then all of a sudden you go into a high-level grassroots program and you may be the third or fourth option. Well, guess what? We know who you are. We love your game, and we're still going to advocate for you. Doesn't matter if you're the third, fourth, fifth option. Shoot, some of these high-level shoe teams, their seventh, eighth, nine man on those teams are starting and they're dudes on the varsity level. So those are the guys we get just as excited about when they come to our events. And I'll say this, we're not saying, hey, playing Gasso and nothing else. Like, go to the circuits, play high-level competition there as well. But just remember that your name does mean more. We got rosters in all week as we prepare for King of the Court. And we're like, oh, yeah, I know that guy and that guy, that guy. So it helps us match make. So we're going into every event and seeing these rosters, getting excited about who we want to get eyes on. Where, you're going to go to these circuits and you may be playing out of state and on a national level, but these national guys don't know all the regional guys we know. So play in Gassos, get your name built up, get that momentum going for you, and then go put on these circuits. Because that's, when you go play on these shoe circuits, we want to see Texas at the top of the stands. So go do that. But try to get in some Gassos. It'll only benefit you. We're not too loud about this too often. Maybe it's just me. I'm being a host today, so I get to talk a little bit, talk my talk a little bit. But yeah, the proof's there. So, Lyndon, you and I headed down to San Antonio along with Tim Littlefield and got to see the state tournament in a new setting. What were your thoughts going in, and then what were your thoughts leaving the state tournament?
Yeah, going in, I was dubious. Let's just call it for what it is. just with the new format, not having your traditional semifinal games going in with starting the 8:30 a.m. games and playing semifinals for the first 2 days, and then having 6 state champions on Saturday. But all in all, especially in the big school, I was impressed with the product. I feel like the Alamo Dome was pretty full, and part of that probably is you're not starting at 8:30 a.m. for some of these games. If you're somebody at Perrin-Witt or Kennedale, you drive down for a 1 o'clock or a 5 o'clock game. You don't have to get a hotel or anything like that. I'm sure that helped the numbers for people from each school traveling to San Antonio for those games. And I feel like the coaches turned out the way they always do. And so yeah, and even though we didn't get that many competitive games in the small school ranks, that could just be one of those weird years where you get some duds of games, but the state champions still looked legit. And then especially 4A, 5A, 6A. I mean, those 4 games on Saturday were elite. Those were 4 of the best games we've seen all year. So right now, I think this is, it exceeded my expectations. Admittedly, I had low expectations going in because this is my 20th straight year of covering the state tournament, and it's just one of those things where I liked what it was before, and I don't want to change that tradition and what I grew up knowing. But if we have these continually, like the Friday night, Saturday night games that are just continuing to deliver with high level players and prospects, then it's going to swing me with that, I believe.
Yeah, I'll say this: you've been there 20 years. That's a flex, for sure. Um, I'll say
Only
this.
one of them is a player.
Yeah, oh, that's one more than me. I'll say this: looking at it from the matchup perspective, we had collision courses in our minds that we kind of started to early pencil in, and then you get to the playoffs and chaos happens. So we didn't get the storylines the whole week prior because teams that we might have expected to get to the Alamo Dome didn't. So very quickly you're on the fly being like, okay, well, this is the matchup we get. What are we looking at? Whereas you have different things in your minds and scenarios in your minds that have marinated all season. So going into the Alamo Dome, I was more curious about how the games would look opposed to me dreaming up some matchups that we kind of thought about over and over again. But like you said, Saturday it delivered, and I want to talk about that more. But I show up places fashionably late. Lyndon, you got there Thursday. So let's get right into the UIL state recap, starting with the 1A level. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, first game of the weekend. You had Jayton making their second or trying to defend their title from last year in 1A D2, and they did that with ease. It was 35-3 at halftime over Bryson, who's just outmatched with Jayton's physicality and how they fly around on defense. They were 0 for 20 from the field. All 3 of their points came on free throws. Colt Gentry wins his second straight state title MVP. This is the same group of kids that won a football state championship back in December. I mean, this and the core of this team is juniors, so they're likely going to be back again, trying to go for the three-peat next year. But this team was just really impressive all year, and throughout the playoffs, they hit a couple bumps, but the 2 tough games they played against Gordon and Texline, they found ways to win, especially in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. So 1A D1. I'm sorry, I organized these wrong for you. They're not in order.
You're
So
good. You're good.
be an elite guy on
Yeah,
the fly.
1A division. Yeah, with 1A D1, Perrin-Witt's been the top-ranked team in 1A D1 all season long, and there's no surprise to anybody they got here. Jack McCormick has scored over 3,500 career points. I think 30 or so of those were against me in my last year at St. Joe, his first playoff game. He knocked us out.
As a coach, say as a
But
coach, say as a coach. You're not
as a
that good.
coach, yes, as a
Just
coach.
sneaking into high school
Yeah.
games, trying to get back to the state tournament's crazy.
But yeah, no, and Perrin, all weekend we kind of talked about how hard it is to shoot in the Alamo Dome, and that's just a recurring theme every year, just because it's cavernous. But they shot 48% from 3, and even though Valley had a definite size advantage with Canyon and Corbin Taylor, and Corbin especially, the freshman who had 25 points in this game. Perrin was able; their guards were just so good, and they were able to make Canyon and Corbin work so hard to get their looks. Jack made a bunch of shots and walks away with MVP and a state championship in Perrin's first trip.
So you mentioned just a second ago, you're one of the things you do like is that you're not starting at 8 a.m. Could you imagine starting this session at 8 a.m. With some of these blowouts that you got in the first session?
Yeah, I mean that was us when we made it. It was 8:30 a.m. We were playing the first game. Thankfully, it was entertaining, but that would not be great for me as a somebody showing up to the Alamo Dome at 8:30 a.m. It's 35-3 at halftime. I'd try to find a conference room to take a nap in or something.
At Munster, you played at 8:30, and what would have been a more beneficial time for you to play for you to have a state championship ring right now?
I don't know if it would have mattered against Aubrey King and the guys that beat us at Mumford, but
That's such a politically correct answer.
it is. But
Respect to those guys. Looking at these D2 because I'm still not here in the building yet. But looking at some of these D2 matchups in the second session, they look more competitive. Were they?
Yeah, definitely. And the 2A Division two championship game is the game that everybody had circled. I mean, this Martins Mill team was number one and had beat Lipan earlier in the year. And Lipan's your two-time defending state champ. So this is the one that everybody, I think, regardless of if they split the divisions or not, this game would have taken place on the final day of the 2A season. But Martins Mill, really, their defense, I was really impressed with. You got Jack Kinder out there, the national high school leader in three-pointers made for a career. Hit three of them, finished with 18 or 19 points, prevented the three-peat from Lipan. And then, I was really impressed with Martins Mill's size. 6'5", 6'7" is pretty freaking big at the 2A level with Archer Schneider and Riley Marsh. And those two guys, they made life hard on Lipan inside. They didn't give Court Gaylor anything to look at the basket. And that's why they were able to hold on and get themselves a first title since, I believe, 1949.
Dang. Dang. There you go. Like, I need to find a stat now because 1949, I know it's not that, like, it just sounds like a crazy stat. Now I got to find one because I know you'll have more than that. So moving on to Friday. Now, Friday I wake up. It's time for me to drive down to San Antonio. I'm still not in the building yet, but the 3A Division 2 game, this Coons team, they were the real deal all season. Talk about that game against Paradise.
Yeah, and when you're a team that kind of like forces us to pay attention to you in the 3A and below during the regular season, it takes a special team to do that because 3A level there's not a lot of prospects that are just growing on trees out there. But Kuntz is a team that we've circled and we've had our eye on for a while because you've got Zach Sells, you've got Mason Donald, you've got Cordell Lowe in the 2027 class. And Zach Sells, like this kid, I can't say enough about how he competes. He's proven himself as a shot maker, as a point guard, and defensively, he may be up there with the best in the state in terms of on-ball defenders because he just flies around. He had 4 steals in the first quarter to really set the tone of Paradise, really talented, really solid team, but you're going to have to earn this one over me. And they weren't able to because he was able to just fly around. Mason Donald hit a ton of huge shots. I think they combined for 51 points between the two of them, outscoring Paradise. And so, this Kuntz team was number one for a reason and defended that reputation and ended it with a championship in 382.
So now I walk into the building. 1:00 tip, Tatum Columbus. Now, realistically, I don't watch a lot of the small ball at the Alamo Dome. And I mean 3A, but I walk in, I don't know what I was expecting, but Tatum's crowd, I was like, what is this? 5 minutes before tip, they're rocking. Columbus's crowd's there, it's rocking. Like, I just walked in and I felt like, okay, state's here. And it was a great atmosphere to walk into. But yeah, this was the first game we got to sit together and watch. And go ahead and give me your thoughts on this game, and I'll give some of my feedback.
Yeah, and Tatum, their one loss in the past 3.5 months was to Kuntz in a 1 point game
What a
over the
stat.
Christmas break. So we
What a
knew that this Tatum team was going to be right up there in 3AD1. I didn't expect them to win by this margin, but when you have Luke Sigler and Ja'Cory Bradley both getting 26 points, and just the tempo that they came out with, they were everywhere. They were in passing lanes. They weren't allowing Grayson Rigdon to snowbird and get anything easy to get him rolling. I mean, he still had 31 points, but that was after they'd opened up a 20-point lead in the first quarter. They were able to, keep them at arm's length and then even further throughout the entire game because they were just so active, so physical, and in transition, these two kids can fly.
And what I'll say, like the first thing seeing that game is you can tell. Like I know that Tatum started off hot, but Columbus missed a lot of chippies early, and you almost just wonder if those go and it's a 10-12 game. You just wonder how that confidence to get yourself into the game. I don't think Columbus ever fully got themselves into that game. And they had some opportunities early because I know Tatum started hot, but they missed some easy ones as well. And you just wonder if, like,
Yeah.
late in that first quarter, if it's a more competitive game, who knows what could happen. But yeah, Tatum really, I mean, their crowd could feel it every time they'd go on a run. Like, you just feel that momentum. And that's the one thing I know about a huge crowd is like you can hear and feel that energy. Like it's a 6-0 run, and you're like, that energy's coming. Columbus, they're going to call a timeout. You just feel that. And so great for Tatum to get that huge win. But yeah, Ja'Cory Bradley set that tone for sure. Because we're sitting there at the media table and we're like, who do you think's going to win MVP? But Luke Sigler down the stretch also was big time.
Yeah.
Um, hold on. Okay. We just lost people on Tech Soups Gasso, but follow. I think you and I are on our personal ones on X. So Gasso, Linden, I from Hoopers. But we'll keep the party rolling. Um, moving on to the 4A side of things. Once again, I don't know what I was going to expect, but Kennedale fans, Wheatley fans, this game was awesome.
Yeah.
Talk about your
I,
thoughts on it. Yep.
I think this was my favorite game of the weekend. Um, in terms of you had both crowds rolling deep in the Alamo Dome. It got loud or as loud as it can get in the Alamo Dome just because that place is so big. The acoustics are so weird in there. But, you know, with Quentin Sanders and his scoring, which has been electric all postseason, you knew it was going to take something special from Kennedale to knock them off. But we got that with Trey Smith's play. Are you kidding me? 22 points, 10 steals, a double-double with 10 steals in the state championship game. That's crazy impressive.
No, facts.
And he came up with them in big moments, was able to finish the game late. And then when you talk about Jacoby Lovings and his, just microwave scoring ability, he didn't have his best game, but they're in a dogfight. They take the lead 54-52 in the final 2 minutes, wind up getting this thing to overtime. But the guy we've got to talk about, especially in OT, is Elijah Garrett. Your favorite player. Never pick against him again. I hope you admit to everybody on the GASOCAST, hand up. We'll never do it again.
Yeah, I think just once again his tone, because he got a pick at half court early on in that game, set the tone. That opens up for guys like Dotson to hit big threes, and he was huge. Terry Satcher just makes every play you want a winner to make. But when you start to get in crunch time, and if you see on like ESPN the line chart where it shows probability of wins, that thing goes Westbrook high, then it starts to creep back down, and then all of a sudden Birdville's probability of winning goes up. But then Elijah Garrett will go and make a play, and then I'll give credit to Avery Webb. Avery Webb guarded Elijah Garrett as good as you can. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, his ability to move his feet lateral and make Elijah Garrett have to make a second or third move, which he's capable of doing, was very high level. But getting that game to overtime when Elijah Garrett has the ball in their hand, Birdville fans, after seeing 4 quarters of that, were like, oh, crap, Elijah Garrett to win the game. We don't like this. Birdville gets it to overtime, but then Elijah Garrett just continues to make plays. On the sideline, he jumps like out of bounds to get a steal, and each possession mattered so much there. I know both teams took some time off the clock, but his just ability, and then when it's time to get downhill, make free throws. I'm not picking against you, Elijah Garrett, but you missed some free throws late, but you made so many plays to where they weren't like you got away with them, but just it was a master class of. I always say this. I don't label everybody as dogs. That's low hanging fruit. But Elijah Garrett's a dog, and he showed it. And when you're looking at Beaumont Westbrook, now that they get there, they get that state championship. You have Elijah Garrett coming back, but then you look at this Birdville team. Um, you have a lot coming back on that side too. And these playoff runs now they're a little more untraditional that we've seen now that they split into two ways. But a Birdville team that beat a lot of high level teams coming into this with El Paso Chape and Frisco Heritage, um, they they're getting right back to work, and don't be surprised if they end up um, back at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the end of the Saturday early session. Lyndon gets us. I'm from San Antonio, so I have my specific Mexican food restaurant spots, but we go over to Alamo Cafe. They're throwing tortillas at our face. It's elite. It's elite food there. We turn around, we get back, and this 6A Division II game tipped off like it was like Sunday at a Gasso. 2-0-3 teams. 15 minutes on the warm up clock, and both teams are like, "Hey, we're ready to hoop. Refs ready to go. Let's go." Because we walk into the gym at 5:10 and the second quarter starting. So somebody figure that out, UIL.
Yeah.
But we get in there, we look up at the stats, and we're like, okay, Silas Rodriguez has already gotten hot. But I mean, this game was one of those ones where you're trying to find storylines. And I was just like, you know what? Forget the storylines. I know the players. Let's just see what happens. And it really gave us a high level game. Don't you agree?
Yeah. And, based off of what we saw from getting there a little bit later, shout out Alamo Cafe. Um, but we saw Jordan like kind of dominate the game for the stretch that we got to see. They closed well, quarter, and they start out like on a 9-0 run, just open the third with hitting three threes. And it's like, okay, Silas must have really been shooting it well in the first half to get them in this lead. And, just about that time, he starts making shots again, and they were feeding him. And Jordan Lowry did an excellent job just, being able as a creator to get him and kind of know that, kind of have that sense to say, you know what, he's got it going right now. And he did. And, with Katie Jordan, we've talked about them a lot with just how tough they are to beat. They're just so physical. They can switch 1 through 5. Ray and Fadico was amazing on the defensive side of things.
Crazy.
Um,
Crazy.
yeah. And with their guards, with Jaden Holt making some shots, Elijah Black going out there and doing his thing. I mean, this was going to be a dogfight. We knew this was going to be a close game. But 45 seconds left. Geyer gets the ball, and they look like they're waiting for one, but that's not the way it happened.
It was not the way it
You know,
happened. And credit once again, we watch so much basketball, and like we just did the next gen quick hands, and I'm just like, oh, he's a high level football player. That's why his hands are so good. Could you imagine him getting off the line, just making any type of reference that he just picked the guy at half court? So I'm just like talking to whoever will listen to me. But yeah, there were so many high level dudes in this game, and when you get to the big boys at 6A, and we're like, and anybody that wants to be like, well, that's Division II. Well, no, they showed that they've had huge seasons all year, both teams, and I'm glad that game delivered.
yeah.
So, moving into 6A Division I, and Texas has continuously showed that we're not just football state. So, the Max Preps of the world, the Sports Center Next, the Ball is Life, the Slams, they're all previewing this Duncanville Houston Bel Air game. And whatever you think, you thought maybe it was supposed to be Allen Brennan, so did I. But now you get the two hottest teams in the state on a collision course right now at the peak of high school basketball in Texas. Really quick before we break this down, what were your thoughts on these two teams going into this game? What were you looking for on the matchups?
So the one thing that stuck out to me was kind of the same reason why I thought Bel Air had a good chance against Brennan, was that their size and their physicality. They have two dudes out there who are physical bucket getters and seem like they were bred for that. With Shelton Henderson, with LJ Andrews, they're able to just fight tooth and nail and go get you a tough one in late game situations and early game situations. It doesn't matter. They're tough bucket getters. Um, and that's the one thing. We sat at Snoop Johnson's Champions Classic back in November and watched Duncanville struggle with Kimball's size and physicality on the inside. So that was one of my keys to the game was, Duncanville's got to find a way to stop that physicality. Their guards are good enough to win a state championship, but they got to find a way to get around LJ and Shelton on the inside. So that was kind of my thoughts going into it to see how Peavy would handle that.
Yeah, and we'll talk specific names, but let's get into that game early on. Um, we were like, okay, Shelton Henderson has a huge 26 and 20 game against Brennan. His name's buzzing more because the casual fan, it's weird. Like, I mean, the casual fan, like, they're coming up, which one's the one going to Duke? Asking. Like, and we're on Media Row and people are asking me that. I'm like, that specimen over there. And very quickly, what do we talk about? Shelton Henderson's ability to go transition, and he never just runs over people. There's no charges. It's just they bounce off. And you see right away, Duncanville makes a business decision very quickly. He goes coast to coast, gets a layup. So he gets them into the game there. Bug Edwards hits a shot early, the first one, and you're like, okay, Duncanville's been here, they know. But that back and forth, who was the name that stepped up for you on Duncanville very early on to go with Bug Edwards to get them into that game?
Dude, and it's two of them, and it's Cam Smith for showing up in the biggest way that I've seen him show up on the defensive side of things. I mean, his rebounding, his ability to affect shots on the inside, and then continue to threat. He had one alley oop early to kind of get Duncanville sparked, and then Deuce Hunt comes in the second quarter, has 10 points. I mean, we've talked about how electric of a shot maker he is, but to just kind of be that guy who just a plug in, hey, go get yourself 10 real quick. They lead at halftime because of his shot making.
Yeah, and it was Shelton and LJ Andrews on Bel Air, and they hadn't gotten the most production out of their guards. So you're almost like looking, how is this team still around? And then coming into that second half, they just continue to figure it out and get closer and closer. And that's with Bug Edwards hitting big time shots. That's with Cam Smith guarding LJ Andrews about as good as you can. And going back to your Cam Smith point, I was like, if for one night Cam Smith, regardless of what he projects to be in position, he projects to be at the next level, if he just does what it takes for this Duncanville team and what they need, and that's to be not fair to him, but a 6'6" center and rim protector. He played that role flawlessly, was able to wall off, made LJ Andrews, who still had a big game, but could have had an even huge game that might have even propelled them to win. But yeah, I just want to be shouts out to Cam Smith on that. But you watch this game go, and we're asking ourselves, okay, the three ball's not falling for Bel Air. Shelton Henderson's not always looking to shoot threes, but then he starts hitting big shots late. Do you remember that feeling? Because I started to kind of get goosebumps when like even you, like, we'll say some things, but like our tone just talking next to each other is like, damn, like that's different. And like we watch so much basketball, not everything's different. Not everybody's pro. Like, but when we say it, we feel like we mean it. And like when you kind of leaned over, it's like, oh wow, like that's different. Talk about Shelton Henderson's the refuse to not lose in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the stat line of 25 and 15 in a state championship game will speak volumes. But for those who watched his performance and how he got those, like, he was having to make tough shots, and these were threes off the dribble. This was, I'm going to have to beat one guy off the dribble and then extend and finish over a help side or even a third guy showing up and trying to take a charge, which nobody, if you've seen Shelton, nobody should want a part of taking a charge off of this kid. But like him continuing to make shots, and then they kind of figured it out. LJ especially, his ability to just throw his weight around, and these were drives from the wing to go get a puck and then just go finish through contact or get to the free throw line. That's what kept them in this game. Duncanville had plenty of chances to kind of put this one away, but Bel Air just refused to die. There's a late, it was probably a foul on Beckham Black when he's on that drive, but in a game like this, they let them play. They were consistent. I will say that. They let them play the entire game, especially inside, and Bel Air gets a chance down 54-52, gets the ball back with 30 seconds left and a chance to win it.
So before we get to that point, I'll say this because I talked to PV after the game, and I was like, there was a play there when we talk about the maturation process. the offense breaks down a little bit, so does the defense. And Deuce Hunt late in that game has an opportunity to attack. Now there's a guy right there, so he's gonna have to make a one-on-one play. But watching him back out um, and swing it to Beckham Black, who had a on a switch had an easy like ISO one-on-one downhill, ended up making a layup there. Like when you just look at that for a guy like Deuce Hunt, who's one of the most explosive scorers in the class, but you just see because we talk about Duncanville, there's not a shot that they don't like to take. So for them to back out and get that crucial possession, get a bucket out of it when they need it the most, because here comes Bel Air. But yeah, like that was huge. And shout out to Deuce Hunt. I just wanted to just say the maturation, and you're only a sophomore, so just to see that he's going to be playing the point guard with YGC. So like it's like, oh, I love that decision making. But yeah, so we get to the 54-52, and Shelton has his dribble at the top of the key. The crowd stands. They end up calling a timeout. But I said, this is what you want. You want the whole Alamo Dome on their feet with a chance, and you're like, the next play is going to decide the game, and that's all we wanted. So they draw something out of the timeout, and I know everybody after the game was like, Shelton didn't touch the ball, but they got a look, Lyndon, with a very
It was pretty good.
high level guard, and I know he hadn't hit a lot of shots, JD Williams, but you get a look. And I know people are like, Shelton should have touched the ball, and I do agree too. But at the same time, I listened to that huddle because we're sitting right behind Bel Air, and coach is like, do y'all want to win it? And so they get the look they want to win it. And I mean, I feel like that's all you want. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and Jadarian Williams is a huge reason that they're here. Hit tons of shots. They had to beat some of the biggest dogs in 6A Region 3. He had another good game against Brennan just to get to the Alamo Dome in the first place. So I like trusting him to go get the win. And you want Shelton taking that shot, but at the same time, Duncanville's probably planning, saying, you know what, one's not going to beat us. If they want to have somebody else take the shot, we're going to let them, but one's not going to beat us. So it is what it is. But yeah, to your point, like the maturation process of Duncanville from what we saw back in November, where they lost to Dallas Kimball, to winning a 6A Division I state title. And it's guys like Deuce Hunt. It's guys like Beckham Black. It's guys